What is up, you guys? My name is Taylor Simon Maxwell, and I am the author of The Desire Tree, which is available now on Amazon in paperback form or Kindle. If you don't have a Kindle, you can download the Kindle app for free on any smart device and read it on the go. The link for the book is down below, as well as the book summary. So today's video, I really just wanted to get on here and talk specifically about how homosexuality ruins male to male relationships, masculine relationships to other masculine relationships. For me in my own life, growing up, I had no male friends at all. I did not have my first male best friend until I was 22 years old. And I literally joke because I honestly feel like sometimes my 20s was me reliving the childhood that I never got when it comes to having male friendships. And so growing up, I remember being in elementary school, and I, of course, there was like 3 or 4 times where I had like a sleepover, but it was like all the boys in the class got invited to somebody's house for like a boys' sleepover. So there was maybe like 2 or 3 instances where I did spend the night at another boy's house. But for the most part, my whole life, I was always drawn to hanging out with the girls. I always felt comfortable around the girls. And I think there is so much going on there was so much going on that contributed to this in my life. And the reason why I gravitated towards hanging out with girls as opposed to the boys, I think several reasons. I think, growing up, for sure, one of the biggest things was being bullied. Now, I wasn't bullied in elementary school. I was definitely more bullied in junior high. I would say that in elementary school, I was pretty popular actually. Like a lot of the kids liked me and I was friends with everybody. But I think once I started getting into junior high, you know, I did start getting bullied. And I think this is a very common theme for a lot of young men who are struggling with homosexuality because you kind of stick out like a sore thumb oftentimes. Oftentimes, the kids struggling with homosexuality were the feminine kids. We're the ones hanging out with the girls. I mean, people would be like, why are you hanging out with the girls all the time? Don't you have any male friends? I mean, I remember being in junior high and being like sexually harassed in the locker room, and kids would just say the sickest things. I mean, just the most twisted, demented things. And I would get bullied by other boys. And so over time, I started to build up this almost defense mechanism or almost like a PTSD trauma where I would literally be walking through the quad in high school or in junior high, and I would hear a bunch of boys hanging out like over off to the side laughing, and instantly I would just start getting anxiety because I thought, oh, they're laughing at me, even if they weren't. It was like you start getting bullied over and over again by other boys. What ends up happening is you begin to think, well, boys are the enemy. Boys are the enemy and girls are safe. And so I think that's part of the reason why I always naturally just hung out with the girls, because the girls were safe. The girls didn't bully me. The girls didn't say sexually weird things to me or sexually harass me. The girls didn't make me feel uncomfortable. And I think also, too, as you're beginning to struggle with homosexuality in junior high and in high school, oftentimes it's hard to connect with other boys. I remember trying so hard in high school, trying to hang out with the other boys and never feeling like I could connect with them because they're talking about girls and I'm not interested in girls. Of course, I didn't tell them that. It was my deep dark secret. Go and watch my testimony video if you want to know more about that. But that was one of the main issues. It was being bullied. It was feeling like I couldn't connect with them or that we had anything in common, which is a total lie from the enemy. I remember, being a little kid too, and this goes back to elementary school, like first, second, third grade. I remember, in my home life, and it's crazy because what's going on in your home life plays such a huge role in what ends up happening in your school life. If you look at the kids in school who are bullying people, oftentimes I can guarantee you they have a really crummy home life. Something is happening in their home life and they're bringing that pain from their home life into the playground. Like, why are they say hurt people, and it's true. I can guarantee you that the kid who's bullying kids at school is probably being bullied at home. or something's going on, or his parents are getting divorced, and it's almost like a coping mechanism. He's doing all that he knows. He's lashing out because he's hurt. And I think for me, in my own home life, I don't, growing up, I didn't get that bond with my dad. I didn't get that connection that I needed. I didn't get that masculinity that I was really craving and needed naturally as a boy. And I remember, I actually don't remember. I don't remember as a child having those instances with my father, hanging out with him or bonding with him. And what I do remember though is my mother. I do remember my mother giving me her Barbies to play with, giving me dresses to wear. And when you're a small child, you have no idea what feminine and masculine is. And so here I am, I'm a little kid, and I'm playing with these things at home, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it because no one's telling me otherwise. I remember actually going to school and bringing my Barbies to school with me once. And it's like you go to school with Barbies, and it's like, what do you think's gonna happen? All the girls are gonna be like, wow, that's so cool. And so instantly I built this connection. I was building these connections with girls, and it just felt natural. Just felt natural to hang out with the girls. I also, growing up, was a very artistic kid, and I think oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes what you'll find with men who struggle with homosexuality is we were and still are, we're the artsy kids. We were the emotional kids. We were the theater kids and the dancers and the poets and the writers and the painters. And that's not to say that if you are artistic, you're going to end up gay. That's not what I'm saying. But I think in my own life, because I am that way, I am more artistic and creative. I found that a lot of guys aren't. Now, there are a lot of guys that are. Some of the greatest painters and artists in the world are men. But growing up, again, I believed this lie that I just really had nothing in common with other guys, or I couldn't connect with other guys. And I think for me, really asking myself that question, how has homosexuality affected my male to male relationships? And it's affected them wildly. It's absolutely twisted and demented them wildly because, you know, God designed men to be brothers of other men. And oftentimes I use this analogy that being a man who struggles with homosexuality, if that's you, and this has been my story, I honestly think it's almost kind of like being a vampire. Like when you're a vampire, your craving is for blood. And all you can think about is getting blood because you are a slave to that craving for blood. And as a vampire, when you look at other human beings, all you can see is not them as a human being, but them as something that you can use to literally eat and consume and take. And that's often what it felt like being a man struggling with homosexuality, is that God designed me as a man to look at other men as an, a man that could potentially become my brother. But with homosexuality, he was an object of my lust. And so I think that also made it really difficult and hard to connect with men because there was this sexual brokenness within me that those other men didn't have and they weren't having to worry about. When a guy who hasn't struggled with homosexuality hangs out with another guy who hasn't struggled with homosexuality, then that sexual brokenness is not going to get in the way of them being friends. It's not going to ever be an issue. I think another thing that's really important to take note of is, growing up, I never, and this is a huge thing. It's like homosexuality, it's all about masculinity because you're literally sexually attracted to masculinity. That's literally what homosexuality is. You are sexually aroused by another man who by biblical definition is a masculine being. And so you're a masculine being attracted to another masculine being. For me, another huge issue in regards to masculinity, being a man and being sexually attracted to another man, growing up, I had this major inferiority complex, and that's huge. That's huge for me because I always felt less than other men. I always felt feminine. I always felt small and little. And the best scenario, like the best picture that I can describe it as, would be like imagine if a 5-year-old boy walked into a room of 100 middle-aged men. Okay, a 5-year-old boy who's like super short and middle-aged men that are all really tall. Naturally, that little boy would physically feel small, right? He's small because of his age in comparison to the age of the other men. He's not only small by age, but he's also physically smaller, so he literally has to literally look up to them. That's how I felt around other men my whole entire life. I always felt inferior and less than, and I would never measure up. And this is huge for the homosexual struggle, right? Because homosexuality, it's all about being sexually attracted to another man, which literally makes no sense because you're literally attracted to what you already are. You're sexually attracted to another human being who has the same kind of body as you. And so you're attracted to another man who has masculinity just like you have or have the potential to have. And so for me, I was attracted to all the things that I wasn't. And it was homosexuality, it's so much about insecurity. It's so much about insecurity. These attractions and these lusts are coming from a place of feeling inadequate. And so for a really long time, I always felt so inferior. I always felt less than. This idea of just hanging out with the bros, hanging out with the guys, that was so uncomfortable for me. Like, I remember being a kid and my mom saying, like, you should go and ask another male in school to hang out with you or go to a movie. And it would make me so uncomfortable because what homosexuality does is, oh, this is huge. What homosexuality does, and I said this before with the whole vampire scenario, it's so difficult to see other men as just a male friend because they've been sexified, they've been lusted over, and so to separate that is so hard. To be attracted to men and yet on one hand they're supposed to be your friends, but at the other hand you're also sexually attracted to them. It's really difficult to find a balance. And for me, in my inferiority complex that I struggled with for such a long time, I didn't feel equal to other men, and I was so intimidated by other men, especially if they had a very masculine presence. I couldn't even go up to like another friend. Like, how guys will go up to one another and just like pat them on the back, like, hey, bro, how's it going? I couldn't even do that. Like, I couldn't even, like, because that in and of itself, just that gesture of man to man, like, hey, bro, how's it going? Or just like, grabbing a guy's hand and just like, how guys do that weird little do what's up. Like, I couldn't even do that because it was an action that was representative of a confidence I didn't have. And again, it's this whole idea of I didn't feel equal to them, I felt less than. And that was huge for me in my homosexual struggle. It's like I was sexually attracted to the kind of guy that I didn't even believe that I was. I felt so inadequate, so I became attracted to all the characteristics that I didn't believe I was capable of having on my own. And so it really just messed up my ability to have male friends and bond with male friends, the kids struggling with homosexuality being the more artistic kids. For me, like, I wasn't into rough and tumble sports. I wasn't into rough and tumble sports. I was into dance and theater. I was a gymnast for 15 years. I did cheerleading for 2 years in high school. I did cheerleading 1 year in college. So I was always a part of activities that just naturally didn't involve lots of guys. And so I think that adds another layer. Again, I'm not saying that if you do those things that you can't have male friends, but it definitely makes it more difficult. If you're a dude on a football team with, I don't know how many guys are on a football team, 40 guys, I don't know. It's probably going to be a lot easier to make male friends when you're surrounded by guys. And so I think all these elements coming together, throughout my childhood, being bullied, my inferiority complex manifested together with struggling with homosexual attractions, feeling less than, feeling inferior, really prohibited me from stepping out and asking another guy to go hang out with me. Because again, this is another layer. It was like for me to go up to another guy like in high school and be like, hey dude, like, you want to go see a movie tomorrow night? That was homosexual to me. Like, and that's what homosexuality does. It completely twisted my mentality of two guys just hanging out, and that could be okay, and that could be totally masculine and totally fine, and not have anything homosexual about it. So I think it was all these elements. It was being bullied, it was the inferiority complex, it was just naturally being an artistic kid and being involved in activities and extracurriculars that just didn't involve a lot of guys. But for me, where the healing really began, I would say, was in my early 20s. When I was 22 years old, I had my first male best friend. And it's so funny how God works, because I started going to this church's college group, and this man that I met there, who's now one of my best friends, he and I went to the same high school. We never spoke a word to one another. He was a year above me, and we just connected. Like, I don't even know how, but we just connected and we just started hanging out. And for the first time in my life, like little things that most guys would take for granted, I was experiencing it. Like sitting in a car alone with another guy and just having a deep life conversation. And he would be like, "Yeah, dude, I'm struggling with porn." And all of a sudden, he's opening up to me, and I've never, like, this is a guy's never opened up to me like this before. And then all of a sudden, I'm 22, 23, and now it's giving me the courage to open up. And now I'm like, yeah, me too. And now I'm confessing for the first time that I've struggled with watching porn before. For the first time, I'd never told anybody that. And so for the first time in my life, I have this male friend, and this is where the healing came, is that God was showing me that I could be friends with other men, and by doing so, I was getting my masculinity. God was giving me my masculinity. And I will say this time and time again. If you are a man, oh my gosh, if you are a man struggling with homosexuality, you need to surround yourself with masculine, godly men. Birds of a feather flock together. And so if you want to heal with your homosexual struggle, you need to surround yourself with godly men. For me in my 20s, God gave me this one male best friend, and then slowly I started building more relationships, and I started doing things in my 20s that I had never done before, like going on a hike with some guys. I had never done that before. Walking across logs over rivers and doing dangerous things. Sitting around a bonfire with a bunch of guys, working out with guys. That was a huge thing. And what God began to show me, or what God began to do, is the more I hung out with other men, the more masculine I became, the more healed I became. And interestingly enough, God started shaking out all the female relationships I had, and I lost a lot of my female friends. Today, I have one female best friend, and her and I have been friends for a really long time. But other than that, I have so many godly men in my life. And even to this day, at 29 years old, I have pinch me moments where I'll be hanging out with a male friend, and I'm like, I can't believe that I'm just hanging out with this guy, and we're just brothers, and I love him, and he's a masculine dude, and I'm a masculine dude, and we're just chilling. Wow, this is crazy, God. And I think a lot of guys don't think that, because they've been hanging out with guys since they were little and having sleepovers, and I didn't get that growing up. And that has been huge for me in my healing journey. It's kind of like that saying, I think how it goes is, if you want to show someone your future, look at your friends. And it's so true. If you want to be a more masculine guy, a godly man, you need to surround yourself with other godly masculine men who are going to lead you and walk with you and guide you. And it's interesting because I was actually talking to somebody about this recently, about how as a man who struggles with homosexuality, it's difficult to hang out with other guys because they don't understand your struggle. And I used to think that, and I don't believe that's true at all. I don't. I have found that as I've hung out with more guys, more masculine guys who love Jesus, I had so many fears. Again, it goes back to that inferiority complex. I thought once they found out my struggles with homosexuality, that they would think that I was less of a man. And I found that not to be true at all. And it's crazy how the enemy plants all these seeds in your mind. And what I found was that throughout my 20s, God just kept giving me male best friend after male best friend. And now I have a really solid group of guys that all love Jesus, that are manly, that guide me, that lead me, that don't see me as less than because I struggle with homosexuality. In fact, What I have found, it's like, oh, dude, you struggle with homosexuality? Well, shoot, I struggle with straight porn, or I struggle. And it's crazy how you actually have more in common than you realize, because you could have two guys who are struggling with, one struggling with homosexuality and the other struggling with just like heterosexual sin. And what I've found is, at the end of the day, what we want is the same thing. You know, like, let's just say I go and watch gay porn. What I'm looking for is masculinity. I'm looking for validation. I'm looking for love. I'm looking for affirmation. I'm looking for myself to be built up, to feel good about myself. And the guy is doing the same thing when he goes to look at that girl on porn. He's looking for affirmation, validation, confidence, love. And it's a little bit different, and it's coming from different places, potentially, sure, yes, 100%. But what I've found in my 20s is that God has been showing me that there isn't that much different about us. And that was huge for me, because for so long I think I probably might have thought that if I found male friends one day and I opened up to them, they wouldn't understand me. We'd have nothing in common. They'd think I was a freak. They'd see me as less than. They'd be uncomfortable around me. And struggling with homosexuality specifically, I didn't want to be seen as less than. I didn't want other men to see me as an inferior version of them, or a smaller version of them. It's crazy how the enemy just planted all these lies in my mind, and none of them have come true. And I'm so grateful for that healing aspect of my journey. And there's so many things that have come into play throughout my 20s that God has done, but one of them has definitely been God placing masculine, godly men in my life. And so, my encouragement to you, brother, is if you're struggling with homosexuality, you have to surround yourself with godly men. And look, that might even mean cutting people out of your life, especially if you were hardcore in the lifestyle. That might be deleting friends from Facebook, deleting friends from Instagram, cutting people out of your life in love, and saying, hey, you know what? You can either come with me where Jesus is taking me, or you can fall to the wayside. You know, your purity, your identity, it's not worth losing over somebody who's going to bring you down, who's going to take you back, who's going to lead you into temptation. You want to surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up, build you up, make you more of a better man every single day. You know, when you hang out with your male friends, you should feel more masculine afterwards. You know, you want to have edifying conversations with them. You want to have conversations with them that are going to leave you feeling, wow, like I just feel like that was so good. That was such a great conversation we had. And that's what you want. You know, you want to surround yourself with men who, like I said, are going to pour into your life and help you, not see you as some sort of freak, but just see you as another guy. And God's going to do that. God will bring those people into your life. He's done it for me. He can do it for you. You know, I'm thinking right now of all of my male best friends. Again, like I said, they pour into my life, and all these lies that the enemy planted of, you're not good enough, they'll see you as a freak or a weirdo, or they'll be uncomfortable with you. You know, all I ever wanted was other men to just see me as just another man, as a masculine man of God. And that's what he's done. That's what God has done. And so my encouragement for you is begin to pray. I know we're living in crazy times with COVID, and it's really difficult to find other men to bond with and build relationships with, you know, and maybe you're working from remote, or it's hard to go to church. But what you can do now is you can begin to pray. And so begin to pray that God would bring godly men in your life. You only need one to start with. You know, you just need one godly man that you can trust and build a relationship with. You will become the people you hang out with. Like I said, birds of a feather flock together. And so, if you want to be more of a godly man, you need to hang out with godly people. If you want to be more masculine, you need to hang out with masculine people. And so, masculine men. And that is how you're going to get that masculinity back. One of many ways of how you're going to get that masculinity back. I really hope this video was helpful for you guys. I know in my own life, building relationships with men has not been easy. It's been challenging, it's been difficult. But the more masculine God makes me, the easier and easier it becomes. Things that were really uncomfortable for me, to like, hey dude, you want to go get coffee? Like, I couldn't do that. I was so terrified. Now it's just almost second nature. And that's what God does, is he begins to transform you. He begins to transform you and your life, and he builds you up into this masculine, mighty man of God. And those things that were once struggles, they become struggles no more. And so I'm just going to leave you guys with that. Again, the Desire Tree is available now on Amazon in paperback form or Kindle form. If you want more information, you can go to my website, taylorsimonmaxwell.com. You can check me out on Instagram, taylorsimonmaxwell. And also, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you want more content about the Bible and sexuality. I love you guys. Have an awesome day. Blessings. See you next time.